Hi, I'm Andy Schmuckler. Recently, I did a recording which I don't even remember what I called it, but I identified myself in the title as an old man in search of young, good young minds. And that's not the only place lately that I've been referring to myself as an old man. Um, it's not like I don't know the risks of doing that. Um, so I want to talk about why I do it anyway. Well, anyway, the risks, obviously, there are just a lot of pejoratives that go along with old man. I'm not sure, but the you can't teach an old dog new tricks. He's stuck in his ways. So it's the rigidity of age. Um, there's being like time, the world has passed you by. He's out, he's not with he's not with the times. He's stuck in the past. The the guy who can't cut it, the guy who's over the hill. And all of those are genuine um, concomitants of age. uh, And there are some dangers about what happens to you as you grow older. Some of them are physical. Some of them have to do with how you've lived your life and whether you maintain enough vitality to continue it without getting dried up and hardened. There are all kinds of challenges, but there are also some good things that can be accompanied by age, that can be achieved by age. And I'm taking the risk because I see. Uh, Sorry about the phone. I'm applying for a position of old man. Um, in a better sense than the hey old timer, hey Gramps, dismissive way that a gang of young men in a western might treat somebody my age, somebody 15 years younger than me, even in the westerns I recall seeing when I was growing up. Hey old timer. I'm applying more for an Obi Wan Kenobi position. I mean, the, there is there is with age the possibility at least of learning something. You've had more time. Um, you've seen a greater variety of things, and if you've been putting the pieces together, you see more of the picture than you did when you were, like if I was from 1946 to 1970. Um, that was one kind of an America to live in. Um, I feel bad for people who have lived only in the America of the last 30 years. Uh, things have things have gotten ugly. It wasn't that kind of ugly for the most part in the America I grew up in. So one of the things I feel like I can do as an old man is I can um, help younger people see what's happening in America now in a perspective that I think is useful, which is this is a departure. This is not continuous with what this nation has been. There have been other darknesses, the slave power in particular, but what has happened recently in the American power system is unprecedented. And those people who've grown up with, they're cynical. They don't have a vision of what that America could really be something much better. Where, say, the two major political parties agreed that working together to achieve what's good for the American people is what they're supposed to be doing. And having an America in which there's that expectation among the tens of millions who make up the American electorate that that's what their representatives are supposed to be doing. A lot of things have fallen apart and the world looks a lot darker. And I, as an old man, I want to tell you, I'm also a student of history. I mean, this is not America as usual. And I think that the vision of what has been can be sufficient to inspire us to get it back. So there's a usefulness of that. Age is also can be like the ropes. I don't claim as much of that, but I think of the old man the way in the movie The Untouchables, Sean Connery is the old experienced guy who knows the ropes and is helping Elliot Ness go after the gangster force. Because he guided by the old man who says, something like, you don't bring a knife to a gunfight. Is that what the guy says? Anyway, I have some of knowing the ropes, but not my record in practical terms doesn't justify my taking that posture. But the Obi-Wan Kenobi thing of the Force be with you. Obi-Wan saw the big picture and saw some of the major dimensions that were underneath the apparent reality. And he taught our hero, the young man, that there is a kind of a discipline to be undertaken in order to gain command of the power that comes when you see things whole. In a sense, that's what I'm trying to do in my Better Human story. There is a way of seeing the Force, good versus evil even, the Death Star. The parallels are really quite considerable, and I have a way into it that isn't going to make a great trilogy like Lucas did back in the 70s and 80s, but does provide a way of grasping the nature of the battle and being more effective in fighting it, because the fight that Obi-Wan and Luke are fighting against Darth Vader, the Emperor, and the Death Star is basically the same battle that we're engaged in now. It is the central battle, in a sense, of our of human civilization, a battle between a force that that honors what's sacred and works toward wholeness, and a destructive force that represents death and ultimately evil, as you look at the ways it's understood to be. I define evil as a coherent force that consistently works to make the world more broken. That's embodied in Obi-Wan. It's embodied in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. It's embodied in the military-industrial, sacred destroying world of Avatar. These are ways of grasping the essential nature of the battle that we're engaged in. I say that it is a toss-up whether humankind is going to survive and for the long haul on this planet, and certainly, and human civilization in particular. I mean, I can imagine a kind of collapse which leaves a little fragment here and there that's back in the Stone Age or whatever. I mean, I don't know what the human future could be if we have a catastrophic self-inflicted catastrophe in our future, which is quite possible. Even what's happening already with climate change, we don't know what the magnitude of that is going to be, or at least I don't know what the magnitude of that's going to be. I mean, I can imagine that they can ramify in a whole kind of way. We're just at the beginning of the wave. How far is the wave going to go? And then when the wave maxes out, how much is the brokenness going to create more brokenness? As droughts create migrations, as famines create wars, how bad will it get? Or are we just going to just have a bumpy ride? No, I don't know. Maybe somebody knows, but I don't know. But it's a toss-up, it seems, whether that's going to happen or maybe we're going to have a nuclear holocaust. So we better understand what it is we're up against. And so really, as an intellectual Obi-Wan, what I claim to have to offer is a way of seeing how it all fits together. I've worked sort of semi-obsessively my whole life to put this thing together. When I was 24, that idea came to me. That leads to a lot of others over a half century. So I think, and the other thing I say about what this better human story has to offer, I think that it could help us to fight more effectively, to make sure that of the two possibilities that we ultimately have, which is either to survive for the long haul or to self-destruct. And surviving for the long haul means creating a world in which we can't self-destruct, where that is a zero probability, or as close as we can get. Like it's not a zero possibility right now that we could have a nuclear holocaust. And it is not a zero possibility right now that civilization may be in the process of bringing the whole biosphere down, collapsing on its head like Samson in the temple, but without at least the intention of doing it. Seeing things whole makes certain things clear. And having those things clear, like the ugliness we see in human history, is not human nature writ large. I claim to have proved that any creature on any planet, anywhere in the cosmos, that steps out of its niche, the niche in which it evolved biologically, onto the path of civilization, meaning by inventing its own way of life, will inevitably unleash a social evolutionary force that introduces reverberating destructiveness in that creature's civilization. Inevitably, the spirit of the gangster will get a disproportionate say in how that civilization develops from its very first beginnings in, like a garden or penning in animals, all the way up through a nuclear armed superpower, it made inevitable that the spirit of the gangster would have a disproportionate say in the direction in which that creature's civilization would develop. It's part of the system. It's a dynamic that emerges from the system that is inevitably created when a creature takes a step, which is unprecedented in the history of life, of stepping out of the natural order into what? Into an unprecedented lack of order. And the dynamic emerges inevitably from that, regardless of the creature's nature. I claim to have proved that. It shows that the human project has been and inevitably would be that we had to order our civilization well enough, soon enough, to be able to survive on this planet for the long haul. Because inevitably, and I claim to prove this too, basically prove, I mean, that's a little too strong, but that eventually a creature that's stepped onto the path of civilization will accumulate more and more power, basically as a basic trend line, over however much time it takes, more and more power over time, and inevitably will cross over the line where it has the power to destroy itself. And then the question is, will that power be used that way? Or will that power...
I had a terrible T-bone accident. The gentleman blew a stop sign and broadsided me. Airbags went off. I got knocked around really badly. The first order I called did.
That's the central challenge, and I think it's essentially inevitable for any creature that steps across onto that path, because the resultant dynamic is inevitable. The resultant process of selection among cultural possibilities is inevitable. The selection for the ways of power is inevitable. What can prevail in a war against all, of all against all, is what's going to be able to survive and spread inevitably. So the spirit of the gangster, disproportionate say. We're better creatures than we thought we were. And I think that's also a really good thing to know, that we're better creatures than we thought we were. We may all be ourselves more broken, but the social evolutionary process we've been on has had within it a very powerful force of brokenness operating at every level, from the intersocietal level of the war of all against all the way down to the intrapsychic level, where we become what Nietzsche called the sick animal. In that same civilization, Freud is basically saying that we are inherently a creature at war with itself. Yeah, we've had internalized societies, the demands of societies that were selected according to the needs of power, not just the needs of human beings. I've spent over 50 years wondering, if you had to break down how much of the civilized world that we see around us is an expression of the human needs and they're getting fulfilled, and what percentage of the overall shape, I mean, it's a vague concept, I realize, but the world as it is, what proportion of it is a function of the kind of destructive social evolutionary forces that I claim to have proven to have had a powerful voice. How powerful? I don't know. I've puzzled about that. Um, but I think that the transmission of brokenness through wars and trauma and injustice and one thing and another, and families being structured by societies that survived a certain kind of competition, and children coming out with a structure that represents what the society demands of them. I think that there's a lot that's I would say that most of what's broken in the human world, the majority of it, is a result of the systemic forces that I've been trying for the last more than half a century to show. And the only way to get to that such a portrait of the whole uh, is to be working continually over a very long stretch of time. And that's what I've devoted my life to. And I'm delighted to have that to offer as an old man who wants this thing to get out there so that we will actually have life defeat death on this planet. I mean, what could be more important? The choice between the scenarios that, it seems like, to me at least, in the next couple of centuries, either we will have really inflicted a catastrophe on ourselves, or we will have built a different kind of a civilization, one in which the forces that have shaped it in broken ways have been brought under control, so that the forces within us that are geared toward wholeness can start choosing the path we want toward the kind of civilization we want. And we are capable of better than we have imagined, because we are better creatures than we have imagined. So that's the way it looks to this old man. And I hope there are some young men who want to take a look to see if the world does make that kind of sense. And if the labor for the sacred does call for fighting that battle. Thank you. Bye-bye.